What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Fireside Knicks with your hosts, Dylan and Ryan. We're not very happy today, and I think there's a very good reason why. The Knicks are now down 3-1 in the series against the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Season's on the line. Hanging by a thread at this point. It's not looking good. We're very pissed off about it. We're upset. We're not happy. There was a lot we could talk about yesterday's game, and we really just want to dive into it because there's too much to talk about, and we want to just jump right into it. So, Ryan, first off, tell me how you're doing. And secondly, we saw Game 4 last night. It was disastrous. They lost by 9. They just couldn't defend. What is your initial takeaways from the game, and what are some of the opinions you feel about going into Game 5?
Dylan, obviously, I'm not happy. No, I don't think there's a single Knicks fan who's happy right now. But I have to say, we talked about a lot of things, going into Game 4 that we felt were pivotal for them to win. It was an opportunity to get yourself back in the series fully. Like, you got yourself back in the series, but really wipe away an ugly 2 games at home. Probably one of the worst losses I can remember in my sports life in Game 1. This team, once again, looked like a team that, in some regards, the strategy looks like it doesn't belong. It looks like it's not an NBA strategy. We, once again, are talking about a team that has, as you mentioned in the last episode, 2 very, very excellent and talented and productive defensive wings, and they can't buy a stop. This team can't buy a stop. What was the point of pulling Josh Hart from the starting lineup if the man is going to play 36 minutes, and Miles McBride's going to play 15 minutes? And Mitchell Robinson's going to, as you mentioned, we were talking about this beforehand, play 0 minutes in the fourth quarter. 0. Zilch. None. Nada. Nothing. Now, I get it I get it. Like, Mitchell's minus 20. I get it. It was, it wasn't the best Mitchell Robinson game in the world. But what I'll also say is, Josh Hart stunk in this game. He stunk in this game. He was terrible. Awful. And they had guards who were either A, playing well, or B, had a track record in this series of playing well. I don't need to see Josh Hart for 36 minutes when he's struggling. I really don't. And if we're going to be really aggro with, like, hey, if you're having a bad game, you're not going to play a lot in that game. Dylan, where was that at any point in the postseason? Have you ever seen Tom Thibodeau dial back the usage of a starter that heavily in a game when they were struggling? What about in Game 2? In Game 2, did we see Mr. Tom Thibodeau, Mr. Thibodeau himself, dial back minutes for, like seriously just say, you know what, I don't even want to see Josh Hart right now in Game 2.
No.
I don't even want to see, if Bridges struggles in a playoff game, is he going to cut him to 20 minutes?
No, he'll never
Come to
do
19 minutes, 0 minutes in the fourth? It's dumb. If he's going to go based on 1 game sample sizes, why does he not go on 95 or 96 game sample sizes, right? It just doesn't make sense to me, Dylan. It really doesn't. You took away your best defender not named like OJ Anunoby. I'd say he's a better defender than Mikal Bridges. I just think like the physicality that Mitch brings to the table. I know you and I we do differ on who we think is the best defender on the team or the most impactful, but we both agree that that regardless of where you order it, Mitch Robinson's very impactful on the defensive side of the ball. The Knicks couldn't buy a stop. They couldn't buy a stop. Pacers dropped 33 on them in the third quarter, 43 in the first quarter.
That's ridiculous.
I can't understand it. Dylan, I can't understand it. I can't.
I wish I could understand it too because, as you said, what was the point of benching Josh Hart? What was the point? I really want to know that answer, and unfortunately I can't speak to Tom Thibodeau directly to ask him that because I don't get it. He played 36 minutes. For what reason? He wasn't good from the moment he checked into the game in the first quarter to the fourth quarter. There was not a single good stretch of play from Josh Hart last night. Not a single good stretch. He had 5 turnovers too, and they were all costly turnovers. Costly turnovers. The Knicks were scoring points. They had 121 points in this game. Jalen Brunson had a very strong game for the first 3 quarters. They were scoring. They couldn't get a stop. And when you play against this Pacers team who plays super fast, they love to just fly up the court off of makes and misses. When you turn the ball over and you just give it to them and you let them fly out in transition, you're done for. You're screwed because the Knicks already can't defend as it is, and then in transition, they're horrible. So when you just give the Pacers free possessions and free opportunities to just fly down the court and get whatever they want, what are you going to do? How are you expected to win that game? I really don't get it. I mean, even when the Knicks did go up by, like, I think one right before the halftime mark, I wasn't feeling good about it because they couldn't get a single stop on defense. Even in the first quarter, the Knicks put up 35 points. That is a lot of points for the first quarter. A lot of points. It gave up 43. You found a way to still be trailing by a decent margin despite scoring all those points. That's embarrassing. And, I saw a stat earlier today, and I posted this on the Fireside Knicks Instagram, so if you don't already follow that, make sure you go do that. But secondly, I posted this earlier. OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, when they share the floor together this postseason, they are a minus 88. The Knicks are getting outscored by 88 points when our wing stop, our two elite defenders, share the floor together. Now, that could be two things. That could be a reflection on how bad Brunson and Towns are defensively, because they obviously share the floor with those guys the most. Or it can also be that both of those two guys are significantly underperforming in the playoffs as a whole. Now, I know in Boston, those two guys stepped up. Great. But they clearly are not doing the same thing right now. They didn't do the same thing in Detroit. Clearly, there's a problem. I don't know if it's just that they don't exactly mesh together. I don't know if it's a communication problem with the coach and the scheme. But something's off. Your two best wing defenders are out there. There is no reason you should have a minus 88 plus minus. There's no reason for that. That is the lowest plus minus, by the way, as well, for any two-man lineup in the entire playoffs. Yes, I know the Knicks have played a lot of games this postseason, but that includes, like, the Denver Nuggets, who played a lot of games this postseason and fizzled out in the second round. That's still worse, okay? And that's even worse than, like, the Miami Heat, who lost 2 games by 50 points. So, it's just very, very embarrassing to see what they're doing right now. And, I understand. I got to give credit where it's due to a degree. The Indiana Pacers are a very good team, okay? They are a very good team. Tyrese Halliburton balled out yesterday. I got to tip my cap to it. He had a great game. Pacers have been playing well. I'm not going to act like the Pacers are some awful team that we're losing to. No. Pacers are a good team. Clearly, they have proven they belong. But it's clear that they want this more than the Knicks. It is clear. I mean, if the Knicks wanted this more, they would have came out in these games with the same intensity and the same energy that they came out with in Game 6 against Boston. Because that was the game that I thought the Knicks played perfectly. I thought they made all their shots, they made the right plays defensively, they communicated, they rotated, they weren't missing their assignments. I mean, Josh Hart last night couldn't guard a parked car. I mean, he really couldn't have. Every single time someone scored, who was the guy that I saw trailing behind the score? Josh Hart. Every time. And it's go ahead. I see you want to have a point.
I was just
going to
say, I think it's really important, and I'm going to let you finish. This is not like a long point.
No, it's just a conversation.
It's important to make sure we are not sitting here and saying that Thibodeau's the only person who deserves blame. We are going to blame the players as well. I'm glad you're touching on player performance too, because I think that people perceive the anti-Tibbs argument as a Tibbs-only argument. This is a shared blame situation, but Tibbs shoulders too much of the blame for me to stomach.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like here's the way I put it. Okay, last night in Game 4, all around collectively bad effort from both the players and the head coach. Bad effort. I can acknowledge when someone other than Tom Thibodeau blows a game, but we also can't just say, oh well, the players suck. That's why it's not Tom Thibodeau's fault. No, because Tom Thibodeau plays a part in that. When there's miscommunication on defense and a lack of rotating, when you have a lot of elite defensive players out there, yeah, it's partially on the players, but how can you also not watch that unfold constantly and not blame the coach for that? How as a head coach are you not getting in their heads and telling them to wake up and to actually step up and communicate? Because at that point, it seems like the players aren't really playing for the coach. I know they'll say in the media all the time how much they love Tibbs, but they're going to always defend their head coach. At the end of the day, these guys look lifeless, especially on the defensive side. I mean, the Pacers got whatever they wanted yesterday. Whatever they wanted. They shot like 50% from the floor and 40% from 3, put up 130 on us, with relatively easily too. I mean, there was like no resistance by the Knicks whatsoever on the defensive side of the ball. That's a problem. As with Tom Thibodeau being this like quote-unquote defensive mastermind, defensive specialist, whatever you want to call him, and you have OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Mitchell Robinson, 3 very good defenders that start in your lineup, and you struggle that bad defensively. At that point, can you really sit there and go, oh, well, it's just Brunson and Towns' fault? That's why. Can we really say that 100% of the time? Or can we blame Thibodeau for the schemes a little bit? I think it's a combination of both. I know a lot of people like to just point blame at the players and say, oh, well, Brunson and Towns suck defensively, so that's why we suck defensively. Okay, they do suck defensively, yes. But a good head coach would ensure that they can maximize the talent of the rest of their defensive guys to cover up their flaws. And you have Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby on your team. You couldn't have asked for a better wing pairing of defenders. You really couldn't have asked for a better pairing, on paper at least.
Well said.
And
well said.
You couldn't have asked for a better pairing with those two, and yet you suck defensively. Yet you are a bottom-ranked defensive team. The plus-minus I just mentioned, you're getting outscored by nearly 100 points with those two on the floor. At that point, can you really sit there and blame the players for 100% for that? Yes, you can blame them partially, but can you give them 100% of the blame and say Thibodeau is free from criticism because he reached the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 2.5 decades? No, you can't do that. That's really all I got to say about that. I want you to jump in on that because it frustrates me how some people watched last night's game and think Tom Thibodeau is like this amazing coach still. I don't even think he's a bad coach. He's lost me this postseason. He really has. I was defending him all year, and now he's lost me. He lost me in Detroit, to be honest with you. It's not even just like right now switching up. No, he lost me in Detroit. I want you to jump in on that.
I think he lost me a little earlier because the thing that really frustrated me about Tom Thibodeau is that the New York Knicks were a team that were 27th in three-point attempts in the season, and I keep referencing that stat because traditionally speaking, teams that don't shoot a lot of threes don't win unless there are a couple of exceptions. So the notable recent exception is if you look at the Denver Nuggets with Jokic and Jamal Murray. And the reason I mentioned that team is because that team actually has some of the same quote-unquote flaws as this New York Knicks team has. Their two star players are a center who's below average defensively for a center, and a guard who cannot guard a traffic cone, a small guard, like inherently limited because of his size. And they won a title. Now, I will say a couple of things. Denver, obviously, they were, Jokic is a much better player than Cat or Brunson. And I also want to acknowledge that Denver did not have to play the quality of teams that the Knicks would have to play if the Knicks were to go to the NBA Finals. So if the Knicks, by beating Boston, I think that the Boston Celtics were a better team than any team that the Denver Nuggets beat that year. Not saying that this Knicks team was better than that Denver team, but to say that I think this Knicks team could actually have beaten that Denver team in the NBA Finals. Not saying it's more than even 50 times. If you play that NBA Finals out or a 7-game series out between those two teams, out of 100 times, I think the Knicks win 35 to 40 of those simulations, which is a good amount of that. That's enough that you could say you could reasonably expect that you should compete in that series, talent-wise at least. But when you look at scheme, right, once we start factoring in scheme, Dylan, my confidence in the Knicks' ability to beat a team that's a well-oiled machine and has the fluidity and the structure, the play structure that these kinds of teams have, I start to doubt their ability to contend with those teams. I think they beat Boston because they were talented, and Boston's also talented, but Boston didn't execute their plays the way that Boston wanted to, and they were dealing with some injuries. And the Knicks capitalized. And people could say, again, there are some Celtics fans who will hear that and go, you see, yeah, you guys got lucky. Like, no. Failure to execute is still failure, right? That's not luck. You failed, right? And capitalizing on failure is what a good basketball team does. In any sport, a good sport team, a good person, anything. When we're talking about competition, capitalizing on mistakes is important. But the Knicks cannot beat a team that is not making these grandiose mistakes. The Pacers are defensively very flawed. The Knicks should be more than well equipped to handle a flawed defense. Dylan, this team you talk about the defensive talent. What about the offensive talent? You mean to tell me a team with Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges on the same starting lineup cannot consistently score the basketball? Are you kidding me?
It's ridiculous. And, the fact that they, like I said, they were scoring last night. But when you can't stop them, what's really the point? What is the point of scoring 120 plus when you're just going to give it all right back?
And to your point, too, on the defensive side, because I was thinking about the Denver comparison, Michael Porter Jr. is on the court with those two guys. Is Michael Porter Jr. some world beater defensively? The guy's his only role is to shoot the basketball. Get the basketball in your hands and shoot the basketball. And also maybe give some terrible podcast opinions. But that's a whole other conversation. Michael Porter Jr. is not some all-world defender where, they had those three on a court and won an NBA championship. And Tom Thibodeau has not figured out a way to make this team look competent. And again, yes, they beat Boston. Again, that is a huge accomplishment, and I'm really proud of this group for that. But I don't think they did it because of Tom Thibodeau. I think they did it in spite of Tom Thibodeau. I don't like it's look at the plays they run. Watch the Knicks on offense. They don't run these complex plays or even these fluid plays. We go, all right, they're getting everyone involved. They're running plays to get, using Jalen Brunson as a decoy more. Using Cat as like, hey, if Jalen Brunson's getting covered, and we saw this in the fourth quarter, people like, he only took 4 shots. I don't think Jalen Brunson got like more than, how many good looks do you think Jalen Brunson got in the fourth quarter? I don't think he got a ton of them. You can argue you want your star player to empty the clip, and that's fine. But that's on a team that doesn't have scoring depth. He has Karl Anthony Towns is his teammate. Mikal Bridges is his teammate. OG Anunoby is his teammate. You mean to tell me he cannot rely on anyone? Like he has to force bad shots to score? I think that's BS. I think that's a crazy take. And if you look at the supporting cast, hey, I mean, Cat defensively is a liability. Mikal Bridges, we've got to be more willing to take contact when we have a shot at the rim, right? Got to take a high efficiency shot. Fadeaway, dude, that fadeaway, he's a good mid-range shooter. He is. That's not a higher efficiency shot than just going up with it. Just go up with it, man.
I don't think you realize how much that shot actually angered me. It's beyond embarrassing. That was horrible shot. I mean,
yeah.
Take contact, man. I understand, you don't want to get whacked, but like, bro, we're in the playoffs, and you are also 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan. Take the ball to the rack once in a while, please.
That's what I appreciate about OG. That's why when OG's a player that isn't perfect all the time, but the reason I view OG Anunoby is like I view OG Anunoby as the better player between the two because of things like that, where like he takes higher efficiency shots. You know what I mean? Like his shot attempts are good shot attempts. Sometimes he doesn't make those efficient looks, but he's creating or he's getting to spots where he can get an efficient look, and the defense has to respect that. And I'm not trying to disparage and put everything on Mikal Bridges either. Again, these are criticisms that everyone has to shoulder part of the blame here. Brunson isn't good enough defensively at times. Yeah, but that's his flaw. I know that that's his flaw. I need to build a team around that flaw. Steph Curry isn't a great defender. I saw some people going, you can't win with Jalen Brunson because, Steph Curry was yes, he has to be like a Steph Curry level defender. I saw a tweet like that. I'm like, dude, Steph Curry sucks defensively. What are we doing? He had Draymond Green next to him. Who's the worst defensive player Steph Curry's played with on a title team? Like Kevin Durant?
Jordan Poole is the worst defensive player maybe from the 2022 chip.
Yes, that is the worst. Yes, that is a great point. But that team was also probably the worst team he's ever won a ring with.
Oh, yeah.
That's
easily.
probably the yeah. And the KD, like, the KD years and the first 2 years without KD, they were very dominant. I don't, like, who was their worst defender? It's kind of crazy to think about. Like, that's what a good roster construction looks like. But also to look at the Warriors. When they first broke out, they fired their head coach. And they brought in Steve Kerr. And I don't think it's a perfect one-to-one comparison. I think Tom Thibodeau is a better coach than given credit for in terms of, like, if you're going to just call him a bad NBA coach. He's not a bad NBA coach, and he does have a value in the coaching ecosystem. I don't think the Knicks are in this spot in terms of, like, being a good organization if they don't have coaching stability in Tom Thibodeau. I really don't. I think that they're in a worse spot if they, like, never hired Tom Thibodeau in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
But that you have to know when to fire the guy, right? That's part of it. Knowing when to valuing the hire, valuing the contributions of a hire. It's like trading Emmanuel Quickley. We didn't trade Emmanuel Quickley because he sucked. It's because OG Anunoby was there, and you had an opportunity to dump the RJ Barrett contract. Had to do it. Had to do it to keep your window open.
Exactly.
It's those kinds of things. You have to make tough decisions sometimes to win. That's tough decision you have to make to win.
And simply making the Eastern Conference Finals too doesn't exactly guarantee his job is safe. I mean,
yeah.
Like okay, maybe it helps a little bit. Sure, I'm not going to deny that. You made the Eastern Conference Finals. You brought the Knicks back there for the first time in this century. But at the same time, just simply because you got there doesn't guarantee it. For all the points we've been making throughout this episode, they beat Boston, in my opinion, in spite of Tom Thibodeau. I think that was more of Joe Mazzulla being a not so good coach as opposed to Tom Thibodeau being a great coach. That's what I personally think about that one. And we've seen examples of coaches lead successful teams and then get fired. As you said, Mark Jackson gets fired, and then they hire Steve Kerr, Golden State, back in 2015, and then Dwayne Casey with the Raptors. They let him go after a very good season. And then they win the title next season with a different coach. As you said, I mean, there's always a time to do it. And I know some fans don't want to just give up on it right away. I understand that. Maybe I understand not wanting to break up an entire core after you spent this time building it and now you're this far in and you really have a chance. I get it. But at the same time, you have a window. Take advantage of that window and go for the moves that you think are the right ones. Like, the Mikal Bridges trade, for example, that was an all-in move that has backfired. It backfired. I mean, it was a move that, we criticized when it was made because of the lofty return we gave Brooklyn, but it's clearly backfired. Mikal Bridges, clearly under Tom Thibodeau's system, doesn't work. Maybe he'll work in a system that has, more offensive flexibility with a more offensive-minded coach. Maybe he could flourish here. But as long as Tom Thibodeau is the coach, this is the version of Mikal Bridges we're going to have. That goes the same way for Karl-Anthony Towns, for some of the other guys we have on the team. The versions of these guys that we have now is who we're going to have as long as Tom Thibodeau is the coach. It's just a fact. I mean, if you don't want any of these guys to get any better or to improve on either end of the floor, you have to change the coach if you want that to change. You have to. And I'm not even sitting here going, oh, fire Tibbs before Game 5. No, I'm not getting that irrational. But, at the same time, I think his job is really on the line. I mean, if he manages to push these guys to 7 and wins the next 2 games, maybe we'll have a different conversation. But as of right now, with the way he has been coaching this series, you could argue he is the biggest reason why they're down 3-1 right now. Because if you look at some of the things that have happened, it's like, part of it's a personnel problem, and that, of course, falls on Leon Rose. You don't have any depth in the bench. You don't exactly have a ton of size to match up with guys like Siakam and stuff. I get that. That's a personnel problem. So Tom Thibodeau's got, he's kind of just throwing whoever he can out there. But at the same time, we are seeing results with certain players on the floor, and then Tibbs does nothing about it. For example, last night in Game 4, DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet provided very good minutes for the Knicks once again in the second quarter. Very good minutes. What did they do in the second half? Tom Thibodeau plays DeLon Wright for 1 minute and Landry Shamet for 5 minutes and throws Landry Shamet back in the game with like 2 minutes left, down by 7, instead of Miles McBride, who was clearly the better option to go with at that time. I know they were in dire straits, so it probably wouldn't have made a difference to the outcome, but you got to give your team a chance. When you throw in Landry Shamet in a situation like that, you're not giving your team a chance. It's that simple.
And the reasoning was embarrassing. I was embarrassed to hear the answer. I was embarrassed to see an answer that included Tom Thibodeau arguing that size is the reason why that had to happen. I do not think that, as you mentioned, the Knicks lost. I don't think the Knicks lost that game because of that decision, right? Like, we agree on that.
No, yeah, it wasn't going to affect the outcome.
But we agree that it's about the process. You have to make good. I have to trust my coach to make the right decisions in wins and losses. Your team is going to lose games. It's going to happen. You're going to lose. But I need to know that when my team plays, my team and my roster is headed by a good coach, a coach capable of making good decisions and putting my team in position to win.
And that they're utilizing the right options.
And they're going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. But again, we talk about a process and an approach. And I mean, the process and approach are just really not good enough from Tibbs. And I think the other thing that kind of frustrates me a little bit, we talk about Landry Shamet. This was someone who couldn't really get minutes in the postseason. And I mean, Tibbs, it really felt like he didn't experiment enough with his lineups and his bench during the season. If you notice something that Boston and Oklahoma City do really well, I understand that they had a little bit more cushion to work with in the year Boston won the title, and this year it looks like Oklahoma City will win the title, just kind of based on where things are going right now. And I'm not saying that just because the Knicks are down 3-1, I hate this the Pacers and they don't stand a chance. I think that it doesn't matter who would have left the Eastern Conference. The Thunder are the overwhelming favorites to win it all. They experimented. They tried things with their lineup. They tried things with their rotations during the regular season, and so that in the postseason they had a variety of lineups they could throw out. They had a variety of combinations. They had an ample sample size of games played or minutes played with these different 5-man looks, and they could go from there. And they can optimize their lineup because there is a learning process. There's a learning curve. There's an educational phase you have to go through with your roster, especially when you have a lot of new pieces. The Knicks never went through that. The Knicks it's the same starting 5 from start to finish. Good days, bad days, doesn't matter. Does not matter. Same guy's going to come off the bench. Why were all those minutes distributed to Precious Achiuwa, who was very obviously not going to crack the playoff rotation, barring an injury? He played enough when Mitch was out. It's not like he wasn't he played when he had to play, and then he kept playing when he didn't have to play. I would have loved to see Shamet play more in the regular season, considering he's a 39% shooter from three. One of the biggest issues is that they don't have spacing, man. They can't space. They cannot space the floor. They do not have ample spacing.
And the other thing I want to add to
dude.
that, too, is when DeLon Wright stepped in for Brunson when he was out, and he had that impact. You know, the Knicks went, I think, like 4-1 in the 5 games that Wright started, and that they were still winning games in spite of Brunson being out. Why didn't you give DeLon Wright a chance to actually crack the rotation at that point? Because once Brunson came back, DeLon Wright was suited back to the bench, which, you know, I understand you have Miles McBride, who's going to obviously play over him, but how can you not experiment with a possible lineup with them together? We saw the lineup play in Game 3 of Wright, Shamet, Deuce, Hart, and Mitch, a lineup that we all looked at and said, what the hell is this? Because no one could score. And that lineup ended up winning the game for the Knicks. Ended up winning the game. And it's also,
like, we have enough to know that Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, at least under a Tom Thibodeau scheme, do not fit well with each other. We know that. We're aware of this. But they play excellently, brilliantly, individually, with any lineup really that they throw out there that doesn't include the other. Do you remember the R.J. Barrett, Julius Randle situation years back where it was that same dilemma? One would play really well when the other wasn't on the court, and then vice versa, and then they'd play poorly together. And the question was always which one had to go in order to make this team better. You have a similar dilemma, except number one, it could be scheme related, and number two, and more importantly, we're not talking about R.J. Barrett and Julius Randle. We're talking about Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. No disrespect to Julius Randle. I know some people are suggesting maybe that's the better player. No, he's not. I'm sorry. I love Julius Randle. Great player. Cat's a better player. And don't even try comparing R.J. Barrett to Cat or Jalen Brunson. That's disrespectful. You know what I mean? Come on, man. You mean to tell me we can't, as you mentioned, like get a little experimental here and try these lineups out that include one and not the other, and get guys in these in that.
And you
like
know,
DeLon Wright is a
you want to know what's
guard.
crazier too? Like I don't even mean to cut you off, but like what I think is really jarring is that Brunson and Towns, you essentially kind of can't play them together. You can't. And that's supposed to be one of your, top offensive duos in the entire league. I mean, those two guys were all-star starters, yet it's impossible to play them together because of they individually suck defensively. We know this, but Brunson is 6 foot.
Oh, they're
like
so
one.
bad.
Brunson is like 6. Brunson is like 6'1". You can't only expect so much defensively. Cat, I don't know what's going on. You are 7 feet tall. I don't know how you can't defend.
Well, it's not even. We don't even know what's going on. He's been bad his whole career at it.
I know.
He's 7 feet tall and he's bad at defense. It's been the case for
even so. I just don't. I have no explanation for it other than he's just a bad defender. And with those two guys, yes, part of the reason you can't play them together is because they both stink at defense. But at the same time, they're supposed to be that good offensively that it's not supposed to matter. And with Tom Thibodeau not exactly running a good offense, with this very slow-paced half-court set that they always like to run, you're not maximizing their talent. You're not maximizing Brunson and Towns' scoring abilities. You are kind of just, letting it be, and you're not really, like I said, you're not maximizing it. You're not taking advantage of it. You're not playing fast enough. You're not exactly keeping the defense on their toes because one possession it's all Brunson, the next it might be all Towns, but it's very ugly shot attempts. It's very, one-dimensional. It's one-on-one play. You're not exactly moving the ball. You're not running the pick and rolls, the pick and pops. You're kind of just like doing the same simple plays over and over that teams know what they do. You're not maximizing it, and it's frustrating. It is super frustrating, and I think in a better offensive system, those two guys can flourish together. I really do. They're too talented to not be able to work. That's simple. But with Tom Thibodeau at the helm, I don't know if it's going to work.
And I'll also say this. One of the things you could do is, in theory, load up on defense around them. And one of the players we suggested is Miles McBride at times, because Miles McBride is kind of a seamless fit. You improve the defense, and you also improve your spacing by replacing him and Josh Hart in the lineup. And it's easy to slide Hart back into the starting five, or and rotate him back in and bring him off as a sixth man because he's a high energy guy. He's very versatile. Like you can utilize him in a lot of different ways. It's not like Josh Hart being at the 3 is gonna kill you. You know what I mean? And coming off the bench and replacing maybe a Bridges.
Kill you.
Right. So you would think, again, the simple swap of McBride and Hart would be a simple one that is kind of easy to try out. With injuries and all that stuff, I mean, it should not be hard to try out. Dylan, how many minutes do you think that unit has played, the starting five minus Hart with McBride in the regular and postseason?
And it's 0.
Regular and postseason.
Yeah, I already know the answer.
It's not 0. I'll say it's not 0 because of regular season.
Well, the regular season, I'm pretty sure it was 0, but whatever. I just know it's very little.
It's 48 minutes in the regular and postseason.
That is one game. So, I mean, at that
49,
point, it's 0.
one game. And what is it? How many games have they played in the regular postseason? I think it's like 97 now. 97?
I believe so. It's like 97. Point is, a lot of games. A lot of games.
Yeah. And you know what their net rating is in that? Like, you would think it's like really bad. Like maybe it was so bad that like he was like, oh my god, I can never try this again. 9.18. Yeah, I'll never try it again. Screw it. I'll never.
See what you just said right there.
What are we doing?
Exactly why I criticized Tom Thibodeau, because it's one thing if your lineups do not work. If you have a bunch of lineups and they all just don't work, that's a personnel problem. It's that you can simply attribute it to that. You have lineups that work. We have the data. We have the access to the data to show us that these lineups work. So how does Tom Thibodeau not go there and look himself and go, okay, well, this lineup works. I should try this more. Why did it take until Game 2 to finally deepen the bench a little bit and play the guys that made an impact? Why did it take until Game 3 to finally start Mitchell Robinson? Why? I don't understand. Like I just said, we have access to this information pretty easily. You could just go on the NBA website and find all this stuff in a couple clicks. I don't understand how we can see this and determine what we think will work and what won't work, and he can't. Now, we're not head coaches. We are not NBA head coaches. We're not saying that. To clarify that, we don't know better than these guys at all whatsoever. We don't. I'm not over here saying that. But some of these things are not rocket science. It's not. That's what irks me, because Tom Thibodeau, I feel like Tom Thibodeau makes it a lot harder than it really is to coach a team.
Yeah, and he'll say, some people say like, well, net rating, I watched the film and like, all right, well, let's watch the games. You watch the games, you feel the same thing. And number two, some of these players we're suggesting are like logical fits. It's not like we're suggesting, a run and gun guy that maybe hampers your defense more. We're suggesting guys who have a decent pedigree of shooting the ball and handling defensive assignments. We're not talking about all worldly defenders. We understand that, Miles McBride and Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright, like these guys are not superstars, but it's about playing their role well and playing a role that the Knicks need to make the Brunson and Cat combination work. You talk about, we've talked about various guards in the team, and the one I think that actually like genuinely does deserve the playing, like genuinely does deserve a second look in terms of playing time. There were 814 minutes with Landry Shamet on the court in the regular and postseason with a 5.73 net rating, and it felt like he couldn't scratch the rotation to postseason. And it's like, hey man, like your problems are spacing and defense. I'm not saying Shamet's an all-worldly defender. I don't think he's this crazy good defender, but I do think he's a better. He's a more active defender, and I feel more comfortable with him staying on his guy than Josh Hart. And even if you want to say they're net neutrals defensively, they're not net neutrals as shooters. An NBA defense, I promise you this, an NBA defense will not leave Landry Shamet wide open and expect him not to take a three. And if the Knicks get opportunities, and if a defense does try that, because sometimes defenses will just sag off of who they perceive to be the worst shooter, if that player ends up being Landry Shamet, hopefully it is, because then we have a role player who can shoot threes, getting open three-pointers. Do you know
even at the worst case, even in the worst case too, at least he's willing to put him up.
Right. And sometimes how you beat a team that maybe is better than you. Do you know what? This beautiful thing called shooting variance, where sometimes a role player gets hot because they can hit threes. That's how Dallas got to the finals last year. Fun fact, that Dallas did not get to the finals playing drop coverage and praying to God that they could hit fadeaway mid-rangers with an open rim. No, they shot a lot of threes when they played teams that were better than them, or when they were in massive deficits.
The NBA is a whole different game these days. Three-pointers win
rebounding
games.
And spacing.
Look at the Boston Celtics.
Rebounding, defensive spacing, all three.
Look at the Boston Celtics. Look at how many threes they just spam threes. Okay, they live by the three and die by the three. It's annoying to watch, but they won a championship last year. I know this year they didn't end up winning. We ended up beating them, but everyone thought that we were going to lose to them because they are that good of a shooting team.
It's such an effective strategy that they lost Jason Tatum and blew us out in Game 5.
Yeah.
I was scared playing Game 6. I was scared going into Game 6. I wasn't going to show it, but I was scared. That team was like that's how impactful just having shooters is. That you can on any given night the Pacers. Aaron Nesmith was just putting them up. He got open and was just putting them up. Good 3-point shooter, not a bad one. Good one. And he killed you. Murdered you.
That still haunts me to this day, and that's going to forever haunt me.
Oh, that game is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. That game, I'm going to like need therapy single-handedly because of that game. And Dylan, I think you and I can agree when we look at the Pacers and the Knicks, all these things we talk about the Knicks are things that you don't see the Pacers having to struggle with doing. They don't struggle to realize that the 3-point shot is valuable. They don't struggle to adjust their lineups when needed. They don't struggle to create effective shots. They don't struggle with these rudimentary basic things that, I'm sorry, they're unbecoming of a title contender. They simply are. If you have Nikola Jokic, then yes, you can try and win a title being 26 in 3-point attempts. Yeah, if you have Nikola Jokic. When we have Nikola Jokic on the roster, then you can come back and tell me that that's not a losing strategy. You know what I mean? That's what I'll say.
It's just crazy. And I realize that we're very pushing on time again. We're up to like 35 minutes in this. So, I do want to wrap this up very soon. But the one thing I want to say before we do wrap it up, first off, I apologize if you hear thunder outside because it is very nasty where I'm at. But aside from that, maybe that's just an indicator of how bad the Knicks have been because it's been so bad out. But, regardless, anyway, like I'm saying, we know the Knicks are in dire straits right now. I mean, they're down 3-1. Only 13 times has a team come back down 3-1 in a playoff series, and it hasn't happened in the Eastern Conference Finals since 1981. So it's been a very long time since we've seen anything like that. If there's any team that could do it, it should be this Knicks team. But we're of course we're gonna say that because at the end of the day we're gonna root for this team until we die. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's not looking good. There's going to be a lot of discussions to be had in the offseason. Obviously, they got further than we anticipated them getting when we saw what the playoff matchups were going to look like coming in. But at the same time, we didn't expect to fizzle out like this in the Eastern Conference Finals when we didn't have to play the Cavs. We got a chance to play the Pacers instead of the 1-seeded Cavs, and we're fizzling out. Credit to the Pacers. They're playing very well. They're doing their thing. They're getting hot. Sometimes all it takes is a team to get hot to make it far. So I can acknowledge that. It's not solely 100% just, the Knicks suck and that's why they're losing games. No. They are beating themselves in these games. I think they are. But the Pacers are taking advantage of the Knicks' mistakes, and that's what good teams do. They take advantage of their opponent's mistakes and what they do wrong, and we're seeing it unfold right now in real time. So at the end of the day, we're just going to hope and pray for a miracle because it's all we can do at this point. I don't really have much else to say. Ryan, if you got anything else you want to add before Game 5 tomorrow night and for the rest of the series, because right now, I mean, it's not looking good. We detailed pretty much everything we could talk about in this episode, so anything else you want to add, go for it.
Yeah, what I would like to say is the New York Knicks had, as you mentioned, a very good opportunity to go to the NBA Finals, and one that I'm not sure they'll have in terms of openness, health, just everything that you need to win a title. Right, you need a little bit of luck to stay healthy enough and have all your key pieces. You would like to avoid some really good teams if you can, and the Knicks got a good chunk of that. Like we anticipated you would have to get through the 3 best teams in the NBA, the kind of the big 3, right? The Celtics, the Cavs, and the Thunder in order to win a title. One of those 3 teams getting knocked out was not part of the plan, and we knocked out one of them. That's also not part of the plan. The Eastern Conference Finals didn't include the Celtics or Cavs. Like that was, improbable at the time. It was improbable. And you're healthy. And you will most likely not be going to the finals despite all of that. That is an utter failure. That is a failure. And to be completely frank, if you're a Knicks fan and you're listening to this, it's not that you'll never get back here, but you may never have an easier chance to go to the finals than this one. Now, again, you could be in a situation where, like with the Celtics, it was seemingly insurmountable, and you overcame it. Maybe this 3-1 lead is the insurmountable thing the Knicks need to overcome. But as things stand right now, on May 28th, 2025, we are staring at a golden opportunity that is just passing us by. And we have a head coach who played a very big role in that. And if you're still a Tibbs guy, I understand, but I want you to think about this. This was probably your best chance to win the finals in 25 years, or go to the finals. By going to the finals, it's your best chance to win the finals. Your best chance of winning the finals in 25 years. And your head coach refused to do everything humanly possible to prepare this team in the regular season and make adjustments to the postseason to put them in the best position to win. Do you want that guy to guide the team, the next team that has an opportunity to do it? Do you trust him to take that team to the promised land? Because I do not. And I don't think any rational Knicks fan should trust Tom Thibodeau to take advantage of an opportunity to win a title after what we've seen this postseason. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, and before I wrap it up, I want to get my thoughts out real quick. And people know I defended Thibodeau for maybe 5 months during the regular season. I defended him. I was saying, he's a good coach. The players are playing well under him. They're playing hard. He's lost me this postseason. Something about, I don't know what type of energy shift happened between the end of the regular season and into the Detroit series, but they don't look like the same team. I know that they've won some games, and they ended up beating the Celtics, so it sounds hypocritical to say. But they have made it tougher on themselves when they really don't need to. We've seen this team in the regular season go on stretches where they are just steamrolling their opponents. And I'm not talking about steamrolling the Utah Jazz or the Washington Wizards. No, steamrolling the Memphis Grizzlies, the Denver Nuggets, the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are in the Western Conference Finals right now. We have seen them go on stretches where they steamrolled those teams. Yes, they stunk against some of the good teams this year. They were 0-10 against top 3 teams. But they also had some stretches where they would blow these good teams out. Where they would play hard from start to finish, shoot the lights out, get everyone involved, play good defense. We haven't really seen that same energy in the playoffs. Now, I understand the playoffs and the regular season are two completely different things. But we haven't seen the same thing. This is not the same Knicks team that we saw during all 82. It really isn't. There are some trends that stuck around from the regular season that are going in right now, such as like Mikal Bridges' struggles and, of course, the overall defensive struggles. Yeah, those things carried over from the regular season into the playoffs. But the lack of consistency is another thing that carried over, too. It's another thing. I mean, you went from beating Boston, looking like you could beat anybody, to falling flat on your face against Indiana. They've beaten themselves in this. They blew game 1. And I said after game 1 that there is no way they can come back from that. I sounded crazy for saying that because, it was just one game. Look where we're at right now. We're down 3-1, and realistically, we should be swept right now because we were down by 20 in game 3, and it took a miraculous comeback to even win that game. It took a miraculous comeback to scrape one game from these Indiana Pacers. Credit to the Pacers for taking advantage of our shortcomings and our mistakes because that is what a good team does. That team deserves to go to the finals based on what's going on in this series. It is that simple. I don't have much else to say, though. At this point, we can only hope and pray for a miracle that they end up winning Game 5 and possibly coming back and making this a series again. Obviously, the series is technically not over, and I sound crazy for being that guy that's like, oh, the series isn't over, but it feels over. But it's technically not over, and we're going to keep watching, and we're going to keep hoping and praying that this team finds a way to pull through in the face of adversity right now and figure it out. So that's really all I got to say. I think this is a good spot to finally wrap the episode up. I know it's a very long episode, but we got a lot to talk about with this Knicks team right now. It is a very dire situation. It's a very important situation to talk about with this team. So that's why we've spent all this time talking about it. But we really hope you guys did enjoy this podcast. I hope, you make sure you guys leave a like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube page. And you can follow us on all of our social media platforms as well. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Of course, the same YouTube page that you just now watched the video on. And you can also follow us on the audio version of this. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Listen to the audio version of this specific episode as well. Leave a 5-star rating on that. You can follow me and Ryan's personal Twitter accounts. They're right there above our heads. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out, and let's go Knicks.